In this video, we're going to be giving OpenAI's Codex this year's AP Computer Science exam, particularly the free response questions. And essentially, they're just an hour and 30 minutes where you answer 4 questions and you respond by handwriting some code. For example, here they give you some classes and you pretty much just write different methods or you create your own classes. This is an American exam, and here's the type of content that is covered. It's pretty much a first semester's worth of Intro to Computer Science or Intro to Programming, depending on what your university calls it. So you have primitive types, objects, just the basics, just if statements, booleans. You have for loops and some while loops here. You make classes using all the getter and setter methods and constructors and all that stuff. You got arrays, you got array lists, you got 2D arrays, inheritance, and recursion. And we're going to be giving it to the OpenAI Codex. If you're interested in seeing OpenAI's Codex solve all kinds of other problems and even make a snake game, then check out a video I made in the description below where I demo a lot of other functionalities that this Codex model can do. But in this video, we're going to be working with the AP Computer Science test. And we'll also be grading the AI's response to each of the questions, just to make sure that I'm not BSing. So the first question involves a word match class, which stores a secret string and provides methods that compare other strings to the secret string, and you will write 2 methods in it. I've actually rewrote it here in Eclipse because I've been using this for a few years, but yeah, this is essentially the same class as in the exam. We're going to be creating essentially these 2 methods, score guess and find better guess. So if we go to question 1, write the word match method score guess. To determine the score to be returned, score guess finds the number of times that guess occurs as a substring of secret and then multiplies by the square length of guess. Okay. Occurrences of guess may overlap with a secret. Okay, so if it's overlapping, okay, and then we have just some examples here. So we have Mississippi, I shows up 4 times, so then it should be 4. ISS shows up twice, but then you have to multiply it by the square of the length of guess. Okay. Turns the score for guess. So let's actually just copy and paste it in here, and let's see what happens. What the heck? Okay, so this part does, we don't care about that. But okay, so it's gonna score. That's not exactly the name. Let's actually call it score guess. But it does return an int. And let's see what it does. So if guess.length is greater than secret.length and guess.length equals 0, throw a legal argument exception. I don't think we need that. Constructor. So the string is already lowercase here. I don't think we need this if statement, so I think that I'm just going to remove it right here. Okay, so I immediately see 2 problems. The first is that it needs to return the square of the length of guess. So this is going to be guess.length. Pretty sure that works. Yeah, guess.length, the square of the length of guess. But I'm actually interested to see if this would actually work still. So that problem's taken care of, but there's also the problem that I might want to use substring. But, you know, let's actually just go ahead and use this for part A. Return the better of, okay, so this part is return the better of 2 guesses as determined by score guess. Both contain lowercase and are different strings. So what the hell is this talking about? Alright, the word match find better guess returns the better guess of its 2 string parameters, guess 1 and guess 2. If score guess returns different values, then the guess with the higher score. Okay, if score guess returns different values. Okay, so we're going to be using this method from part A in part B. Okay, returns the better of 2 guesses as determined by score guess. So let's see what this does. Okay, so it definitely has the okay, this is it's too much. I went a little too much here, but if guess 1 is greater than guess 2, just return guess 1, otherwise just return guess 2, which makes sense, right? We forgot to add that if they are both equal, then the alphabetically greater string is then returned. So that kind of, that's my fault, but yeah, let's see what it does. So it definitely compares them, and then it uses a ternary expression. That's interesting. You know what, let's use this as our function. Yeah, there's a specific syntax error here, but I'm going to go on to the scoring guidelines anyway. Okay, so yeah, it definitely did loop through the thing, but it used substring here if you look at score guess. And the find better guess, yes, the first two we got it, but this one, I don't know if the ternary thing returns it considering there's a syntax error. But yeah, let's compare this. So, compares guess to a substring of secret. The AI did not compare it to a substring, it compared to caret I. The reason the reason I was saying substring earlier was because guess may not be a single character long, and this assumes guess is a single character long. It's not. So that would be a -1 right there, right off the bat. Uses a substring of secret with the correct length. No, does not use a substring. Loops through all necessary substrings of secrets, no bound errors. So first of all, I don't know what this score is. It's adding the length of secret. That should not be in there. And then this should be count, not score. So it did not do well there. Did not loop through all necessary substrings, and then count the number of identified occurrences of guess within secret. Identified occurrences. So this one, let's just give it the point there because it does count the occurrences and then calculates or returns a final score. Will not earn a point if they initialize the count incorrectly, or I'll fail to use a loop, fail to compare guess to multiple substrings, failed at multiple substrings. This substring question really destroyed the AI, so they got 1 out of 5 points for part A. Let's talk about part B. Calls score guess to get the scores for guess 1 and guess 2. Okay, it did do that. That's 1 point there. Compares the scores. Yes, it does compare the scores. That's 2 points. Determines which of guess 1 is alphabetically greater. Let's see. Compares two strings lexicographically is the Unicode value. Okay. So it does compare them alphabetically, yes. Returns the identified guess or guess 2. You know, I think this does. I have to double check this. It has a syntax error, but other than that, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a 4 out of 4 points. The first question it did absolute garbage on, but the second question it did pretty well. So yeah, let's move on to question 2. So question 2 has to do with tables. The first class they give us is a single table, which represents a table at a restaurant. We get a bunch of getter and setter methods and a bunch of other stuff that are not shown, so assume this does have a constructor. Yeah, the AP test is weird in that case, but what it wants us to do is create a combined table class. So make a whole class that can seat a number of customers that is 2 fewer than the total number of seats, and that are 2 single table objects. A combined table has a desirability that depends on the views and heights of 2 single tables. If the 2 single tables are the same height, then it's the average of the 2 single tables. Okay, so the desirability depends on the average or the average minus 10. Essentially, it gives us a bunch of examples that you would look through. So it looks like we do need to create a can seat and get desirability methods because those are brand new to this. And it shows us what they should return. So you would actually, on the actual test, you would have to actually look through this. And this is essentially the combined table constructor. But what we're going to do is just, I essentially wrote out the instructions here. Let's see what it does. Okay, so I forgot the public, but var, oh my god. Okay. I like what I'm seeing here. You saw it generated. I didn't type anything. You saw this. So I like that it has private variables, combined table. A combined table is a table, yes. It's a group of two tables, but I don't know if we need this, but you know, let's just leave it in. So we have that. As for the get desirability, if they're the same height, then you return the average of them, which is correct. So yeah, you have to write the instructions very specifically, but let's actually just use this right here. So combined table. Bloop. So now that the AI just generated the class, let's actually, you know, test it. Let's score it. Okay, so yeah, we got the private variables. That's good. Yeah, we got them. We got the constructor. So we got that. It's using this. That's good. Can seat. So yeah, I was right about the greater than. I'm not sure if we do need the equals though. But it's saying if this, then return true. But this is just returning that. Get desirability, if they're equal, return the average, otherwise return the average minus 10. Yeah, so get the average here, otherwise return the average minus 10. Ooh. Uh-oh, I see a problem right here. So the minus 10 should come after, not before. Ah, okay, so the Codex made a mistake, unfortunately. This minus 10 should be out here, but it left it out there, so I'm gonna have to, yeah, so the average should be out here, and then after all this, it should be a minus 10 here. I know I'm helping out the AI, I should not be doing that, but yeah, let's look at the actual square material. Okay, declares a class header and a constructor header, even if they declare as, okay, so they can still earn the point even if it extends it. Okay, so this extends does not need to be here, but it can still earn the point. So we got 1 point out of 8. So we got a point. Declares appropriate private instance variables, includes 2 single table reference. Responses will not earn the point if they declare initialize local variables instead of declare instance variables. Declare variable. Okay, so yeah, we got that point. It's point 2. Constructor initializes variables using parameters. We got that point, point 3. The Codex is really good at just making classes and making things. As you can see here, declares header public boolean can seat. Yeah, it does. It's point 4. Can seat calls get num seats on a single table object. Get number of seats right there. This is get num seats. That's actually my bad, so it pretty much gets the point right there. Can seat n returns true if and only if sum of 2 seats minus 2 is greater than or equal to n. Responses can still earn the point even if they call get num seats incorrectly. I don't know if I can give half points, but let's just say I'll take off half a point. So this is 5.5 points so far. Declares public get desirability. Yes, it does. Whoops. Yep, it does right there. So that's 6.5 points. Calls height and get view quality on single table object. Does not call the height. Responses can still earn the point even if they call get or view quality on constructor parameters or local variables. Oh, it uses it right here. Never mind, I'm stupid. But yeah, this got a, this is a 7.5. What is it? 7.5 out of 8, which is actually pretty good for the AP test. Like that's a fairly good score. But yeah, let's move on to question 3. Question 4 has to do with members in a club. So every member in a club has, you think of a club as a group of members, right? So every member has a member info where we can get their grad year, good standing, and a bunch of other stuff. And then they give us a club members class, which maintains a list of current members. The declaration of club members is shown below. Okay, so they're just using an array list. It's a list of members. In Java, we say array list. Yeah, so we got the add members and remove members. Okay, so that's what we're creating. For part A, write the club members method add members, which takes two parameters. The first parameter is a string array containing the names of all new club members to be added. The second parameter is the graduation year. The method adds new members to the member list instance variable. The names can be added in any order. All members are initially in good standing and share the same graduation year. So I've actually started to create it here. This is a little bit cheating, but let's just see what it does. Yeah, let's just see what it does. Okay, so what's interesting is it chose to use I don't know what the hell all this other stuff is, but it chose to use a regular for loop instead of, I mean, yeah, it can use a for loop. That's fine. I don't mind. I would probably stick with a for each loop just because we're dealing with member info objects, but that's fine. So new member info names.I grad year. That, should be good, and it's just adding it to the method. It's adding to the array up there. So add that there. Bam. Now part B, write the club members method remove members, which takes the following actions. Okay, so returns a list of all students who have graduated and are in good standing. A member has graduated if the year is less than or equals to the method's year parameter. Okay, if no members meet these criteria, an empty list is returned. Removes from the member list all members who have graduated, regardless of whether they're in good standing. Okay, returns a list who have graduated and are in good standing. Okay, so I've added the instructions up here. Yeah, the instructions, I would say, are the most important part of this, because depending on how you ask it, it will return in a certain way. So let's just see what it does here. Okay, so it's using a for each loop. I like that. So array list member info graduated members. Okay, so it's initializing a graduated members. For member info member list, if member dot less than year, remove member. But yeah, let's see what this does. I'm not sure if this would work. Add members, yeah, it uses a for each loop. I don't really think it matters that much. So all it matters is that you're instantiating a new member info, and you're just adding the new member list. Okay, so yeah, that part A should be good. Accesses all elements, instantiates member info, and then adds member. Okay, so for part A, yep, this is 3 out of 3 points. Now part B, however, that might have some problems. So okay, it does have the same method header. Removed so it's looping through. If it's less than a year and they're in good standing, remove it. I'm not sure if the same logic here applies to what the AI wrote. But let's see. Declares and initializes an array list of member info objects. Yes, it does. You see line 27. That's 1 point. Accesses all elements of member list for potential removal. Accesses all elements of member list for potential removal. Failed to use getI. Failed to attempt to remove an element, skip an element. I mean, accesses all elements of member list. For member info member list, it does do that. Calls get grad year or in good standing. It does get grad year and I guess good standing, in good standing. The get status, that's probably my bad for not saying the correct method name. But responses will not earn points if they ever include parameters in their method call. Yeah, no, they're fine. So this would be point 3. 1, 2, 3. Distinguishes any 3 cases based on graduation status and standing. If they fail to behave differently. So no. It's checking for graduation year, but it also needs to make sure that, if you see here, if member list, it's checking for grad year, and then it only adds it if it's in good standing, and then it just removes it. Okay, so it removes it if it's less than the graduation year, and it only adds it if it's in good standing. But I don't think that's what our thing does. So it just removes it, but it doesn't. See, the logic in these two if statements are incorrect, because if it's removing it here, how is it going to access in the else if statement? Well, it would access it, but it's even if it are in good standing, and if the year is less than if the graduation year is less than the current year, then it still needs to remove it. So this, I think that this should not there should not be an else if. This should be encapsulated in here. Now, granted, I do have the answers, but that should be good. So it got only 3 points so far. Identifies graduating members. Responses will not earn the point if they confuse and in the comparison. Sorry, buddy, you did not get that point. Remove appropriate members from member list and adds appropriate members to the array list. That I think it does, because it checks if it's less than the year and is equal to the year and in good standing. So I think it did get that 4th point, but it only got 4 out of 6 points for part B. Let's move on to the last question, question number 4. Question 4 mainly has to do with 2D arrays and just manipulating them. So we have an array sizer class right here, and you'll write 2 static methods of the array sizer class, non-zero row, and then and then resize. Okay. Let's do the first one, part A. Is non-zero row, which returns true if and only if all elements of row R of a 2-dimensional array are not equal to 0. So this is kind of the beginning of the method. It has to be static because it told us to say static. So it essentially returns true if the elements in row R are not equal to 0. If all of them. So all of them have to be not equal to 0. That means that if any of the elements is equal to 0, we should just immediately return false. We don't care about it. It'll return false, the whole thing. So let's actually reduce this a little bit, and let's see what it does right here. So I imagine it's going to be some for loops. Yeah, right there. Whoops. It's generating more than we need. So it actually made it. It did the same thing, but for columns as well. So yeah, row R, column I. If that's equal to 0, return false. Otherwise, return true. Yeah, this looks pretty good. I mean, now although I asked it in a very specific way again, because you have to kind of know how to access it based on your prior programming knowledge again. But I think it did that question pretty well. Part B. Write the method resize, which returns a new 2-dimensional array containing only rows from array 2D with non-zero values. The elements in the new array should appear in the same order in which they appear. Okay, so it returns a new 2-dimensional array only containing rows from array 2D with non-zero values. I've set up the thing in the playground here, so we want to use is non-zero row that we wrote from part A, which I probably wrote correctly. It looks good. I don't know if it's correct, but it looks good. Number non-zero rows as well, which is a helper method that they give us right here. Non-zeros, but they don't show us how it's written because we don't need to use it. We don't need to know how it's written, we just need to be able to use it, which is every JavaScript framework and API out there. But yeah, so it wants us to use those 2 methods. I wrote this command right here. Returns a new 2-dimensional array, essentially the same thing. Use num0 rows. The elements in the array should appear in the same order as which they appear in the original array. Let's see what it writes. Okay, so it creates a new array, instantiates it. Okay, wait, hold on. Wait. It's trying to resize columns as well, which is actually pretty fascinating, but we only care about the rows. So it creates a new 2D array right here, and then if it's a non-zero row, array I, and then if it's a non-zero row, then it's just going to copy all the entries from here to here, and it'll loop through here, and then it returns new array right there. Okay, let's see if this actually works. So this is the resize method right here. Okay, let's start with is non-zero rows. This is part A. Let's look at that. Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. Compares an item from array 2D with 0. Yeah, it does do that. That's 1 point right there. If they fail to attempt the comparison, even if they access. Yeah, it's accesses it. 1 point right there. Accesses every item from 2D array. Yes, it accesses every row and column I, assuming the row that has the same number of columns. Returns true if contains no zeros. That is true. That's the third point right there. So yes, it got a 3 out of 3 right off the bat, which is good. However, let's see how it does in part B. So this should be good. So it gets a point for calling num non-zeros and is non-zero. Identifies rows with no zeros in the context of an if. Rows with no zeros in the context of an if. It does do that in the context of an if. Declares and creates a 2D array of the correct size. Yeah, it uses num non-zero rows and array 0.length. Uses 3. And maintains an index in the new array. Yeah, it does. There's a row R here, R++. Traces all necessary elements of array 2D. Let's see. Goes through the length here, so it's going through all the columns. If the row is non-zero, go through every element and copy them. That's 4. 4 points right there. 4 points right there. Let's see if it gets the 5th point, though. So let's see that. Copies all and only rows identifies having non-zero elements. Yeah, it does do that. I would say so. Yeah. I think it gets all it gets all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these right here are the results of every question that we just went through. It did actually fairly well for the AP test, and as you can see here, this is kind of a score calculator, score prediction website that I've used. This is not the actual 2021 curve, this is the 2020 and all the curves before. So it's total composite score right here. As you can see, obviously we don't have a multiple choice question, so it's kind of hard, but I'm just going to move that right here in the middle. Let's just assume it's average. For this, it still got a 5 on the test, which is acing the test pretty much. And as you can see, even though it got a 62 out of 80, a 62 out of 80 is a 77%, which in a normal class would be a C+, but on the AP test, since it's curved, you would actually get a 5, which is considered the essentially A- to A range for college classes. But yeah, that's the end of this video. If you found it fun, then check out another video I made where we looked at some other features of Codex and solving some other coding problems, as well as making its own snake game. So check that in the description below. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you found this useful or entertaining. And yeah, I'll see you in another video.